The last session now is where we welcome Dr. Padma Bhate Deosthali. She has come from Mumbai for this particular event. She is Program Director for Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights at CREA, which is a feminist human rights organization, and she's also an independent researcher. So she will be speaking from her rich experience and research about a hospital-based approach to the gendered nature of the burns of women.
Burns is a health issue. I mean, I don't think we should debate on that. It is a healthcare issue. And there are distinct patterns if you look at high income countries and low income countries in terms of burn outcomes. It's not as if burns don't occur elsewhere. Large prevalence is in South Asia. But what's more uh, what is more concerning is the burn outcomes. For example, in Australia or other high income countries, even 80% burns will have full recovery. But that's not the case in South Asia. For Nepal, even a 40%, here also 40, 50%, you know, and I'll come to what happens and why do they die and why, there are issues at the health systems level which need correction, which need attention, and Burns policy, will be one of the, it will pave the way for that change. Yeah, go ahead. In India, in terms of estimates, how many, what, one of the most reliable estimates is 1,63,000 burn deaths. These are deaths, okay, in a year. These are fire-related deaths. That was a 2009 estimate. We can argue whether it's gone up, gone down, but even this figure is significantly high. Large number, 65% of these fire-related deaths are women. Majority of them are 15 to 35 years. Go ahead. Now, that number is important because it's even higher than maternal deaths. I'm not, I am a public health person, so I'm not posing one against the other. But to say that maternal deaths requires attention, which is important, but these are also women dying between 15 to 35. Now, if you look at the burns literature in India, you'll find that, epidemiologically, all age groups are reporting burn injuries. With children, it's usually accidents. So it's like water or oil, or that, there's hot rice and there was a vessel and the child fell into it. So a lot of those kinds of accidents. If you listen to the story, all of it kind of, validates each other, and you know from the pattern of burns that that's what the story is. When it comes to men, it's largely chemical substances in industrial burns, those kinds of electric burns. So that those are the kinds of injuries that men are reporting. Women occurring at home, men occurring outside, children at home, but they are, it's also about a society where we don't give much importance to safety. Yeah, so that's another cultural thing for our country. Hospital-based studies, if you look at the literature, they're mostly retrospective. So it's like, they look at hospital admissions over a period of years, and then they'll look at a pattern, percentage of burns, outcomes, etc. And largely by forensic experts and surgeons. There are some community-based studies which have brought in the association between suicides and burns. So, but they are very few. Go ahead. What's unanswered, and I think that's something that you raised, and I think that's something which is very puzzling with this entire. So it's not as if people are not studying burns. It's not that. Public health professionals are looking at it. What's missing is there's no questioning in the medical literature of why so many young girls are dying of accidental burns. Okay, most of these papers, you pick up any journal, they will conclude that it is because of sari and dupatta. Sari and dupatta is worn by young girls from Menarche, but they don't die in their natal homes. They come to a marital home and they die, and their sari and dupatta almost, it's actually reducing women to this thing of we being so careless. that our saris just catch or dupattas. We are so careless when we are in the kitchen. There's no suspicion on why these girls cooked well, safely in their natal homes, parental homes, but are so careless in their marital homes. So, yeah, go ahead. Uh, there is literature on suicide and burns, but mostly it boils down to what Satya was pointing out is quarrels at home, maladjustment. So it's almost like it's not an abetment to suicide. There's no investigation on what may have led to this, but more about her individual, really stigmatizing her by saying that she could not adjust. And even if she's reporting domestic violence, mostly medical literature will document it as quarrels. Quarrels are very different from domestic violence. But there's no investigation into the cause of burns. So, whether it's the quality of stoves, and Donna, we've heard for years, and she says, "Where's the stove? Stove burst, but where is the stove? Did anyone pick up the stove?" And I think that's something. There's just no Nobody's bothered. Nobody is now using stoves. So what is happening? So even if it's kerosene, it is a gas leak. There's no investigation. Ki kyun hua, kya hua? There is nothing like that. And the question that I am always worried about is that if so many women are dying in homes, why is it not becoming a public health problem? Maternal deaths is a public health problem. Why are kitchen accidents, even if they were kitchen accidents, forget it. Forget, even if we assume that we are careless women, we don't take whatever is the reason, why is it not a public health issue? Why is there no prevention? Why are we not talking about, making some level of accountability at the household level that, why are women so unsafe when they go into the kitchen? Yeah. So these are the objectives of my study, where I wanted to understand what were the circumstances around the burns incident to really understand what's happening. So bringing in survivor perspectives, looking at the response of hospitals to burns injury. So what's really happening? So bringing in healthcare providers and their perspectives on what is happening, looking at the hospital data to understand the pattern of burns injuries, and also study and kind of critique in a way the current policy and program around burns. This was done in Mumbai in 3 hospitals, 2 public and 1 private. I conducted IDIs with 26 doctors, 22 burn survivors, 9 key informants, and I got access to hospital data from 1 hospital. The other hospitals did not even reveal the data. Yeah, go ahead. So, estimating the burden of burn injuries, I won't dwell on it because we've already kind of said 1.63. Just move ahead. Just to say that if you, even the program says 1.4 lakhs. If you look at NCRB, yeah, I have picked up from the accident and suicide. So there are about 2,582 cooking gas cylinder or stove bursts. So even if this large number is dying in kitchen, it's not even figuring anywhere. So that whole thing about what, and I think we can have a larger discussion on what happens to criminalizing any, any incident or anything. Dowry deaths are 8,400. Doesn't match anywhere with the burns deaths. Okay, go ahead. This is your NFHS, which says that about 2% of women who've experienced domestic violence have reported severe burns. Now, if you take population figures, even in any given year, there would be more than 14 lakhs who have suffered severe burns. So that's the burden that we are talking about. Go ahead. These are the hospitals that I kind of studied. I won't dwell on it. These slides are available because I think that's not so relevant. In terms, the one is a private hospital, very similar to what Satya was describing. Its cost to care, the dressing, all of it was dependent on the capacity of the patient to pay. Although they had access to Tatas and other trusts to, kind of waive off some of the fees, it's not always possible. And while I was doing my fieldwork, I saw several cases where painfully, the patient had to be taken away because they had exhausted all their money, despite all the efforts of the hospital to kind of find support, financial aid. The other 2 are public hospital. One is a specialized center which is a 25-bedded center in Mumbai, which is a specialized burn center following a protocol, having a multidisciplinary team and all of that, which had a very different kind of, they had good staffing, they had a clear thing of what is to be done, and the management of care was good. Second one, which is a general hospital, which is what exists across this country, where the deaths were high, patients were being admitted, waiting to be discharged to a higher center, and we'll dwell into what was happening at the care part, what is happening to medical care, because a lot of us assume that medical care must be standard. Yeah, I'm sure, and I'll kind of come to that. Yeah. This is just to kind of again give a pattern. I will quickly look at these slides that the one hospital that gave me access to the data, you see it's like the men and women. If you look at percentage of burns, the severity, you'll find that the lower grade burns were mostly in men. So it's genuine, accidents here, right? But the severity goes up with women. Yeah. Even in outcomes, those who died are much higher for women. 49% of women died. If you look at the against medical advice, these are women where family have just taken them away, probably to their death, and transferred to a higher center, eventually probably would have died. So the burn outcomes very skewed as far as men and women is concerned. Now coming to the survivors perspective, the lowest was 15% that I spoke to, and the highest was 95%. 7 women that I spoke to died, before discharge. And one woman I met in the community, she had suffered 75% burns, and she survived probably because she had a strong support where a FIR, family threatened a FIR. They belonged to a middle upper class, and for some reason the family was adequately threatened that they ensured that she gets the required medical care, which allowed her to survive, here. Now, this is interesting, and this is what is the crux of what's happening and what is missing, and why the work that Aveksha does in Victoria Hospital is so significant. The medical records, if you look at the medical records, 15 reported accidents. So women said these are accidents. 6 said they were suicide. So they said that, I have burnt myself. 1 had said that she was burnt. But when I spoke to these survivors, only 3 of them reported accidents. Okay? 6 of them changed it to suicide when they were promised confidentiality. 2 of them spoke about homicide. So it's not just suicide that they hide, they also hide homicides, as Satya has pointed out. 4 of them maintained it's an accident, but they spoke about domestic violence. So either they didn't feel safe enough to still say that it was, or it's this whole experience of domestic violence could make her, kind of create such a situation where she's not able to say whether this was done to her or it's a genuine accident. It's like it does cause a lot of trauma. So 4 of them maintained it's accident, but they reported experiencing domestic violence. So only 3 of the 22 were following up for post burns care. That's the thing. And I just want to highlight here that when my study was being done, of course, I went to the ethics committee. The ethics committee said, you can't speak to women in the burns ward. They are not in a position, understandable. So, they said you go to the OPD for follow-up and you speak to them there. I spent 1 month in each of the facilities at the OPD. No one came because women are not following up. They're either dying or they just disappear after they, we really don't know what's happening to them after they have left if they have survived the burns. And so one had to go back, seek permission, and that's how I conducted these interviews in the hospital. Yeah. Response of hospitals, and I think this is the crucial thing. This is based on my observation, so it's a triangulation of what I saw as well as what providers themselves said. So they are not lying. So, they're saying that they are part of the system and this is how the system works. They said there's no standard protocol. So the fact that, if you have any burn injuries, the medical protocol expects that water should be should go into your body like full speed. It's not like just little. And you go to any burns ward, you'll find this drip, tuck, tuck, tuck. Yeah, drip. Somebody will come, they will even lower that thing because they want the women to die. So that basic immediate care also is not being followed in all hospitals. So that is the missing thing. No multidisciplinary team. So no physiotherapist, whatever. Because if you look at the private burns ward, even the specialized center, from day one you need a physiotherapist. It's not like if she survives, then we will see. She needs it from day one, but that's not available. There's been a huge change in burns care in India, and there's actually a lot to boast about. Okay, so chronic burns, there's great, we are specialized in it. Our plastic surgeons are known for the kind of great skills they have. But acute care, you don't find that. They're not interested in acute care, and acute care falls within general surgeons, who again are not interested. So there's this whole no man's island when it comes to burns care, because neither plastic surgeons want to look at it nor general surgeons. Okay, and there's an interesting example here of KEM hospital, where one of my key informants spoke about how a burns, the protocol in KEM hospital, which is a premier hospital in Mumbai. Moment a burns patient came, there would be an assessment of the percentage, and if she was more than 50%, there was a judgment that she will survive, right? So she was sent to the plastic surgery department. Sorry, less than 50%, then plastic surgery. If she was more than 50, she was kept in the general ward. So the death was declared there because the general ward did not have a protocol for burns care. So she was just lying there till she, eventually died. But less than 50, only then. And there was this case where both the units came in and assessed it marginally. One said 45, 50, other one said 50, 45, because nobody wanted her. And that's how the KEM then changed the policy to say, no, everybody should go to plastic surgery and everyone must get a standardized care. It's a neglected issue by health professionals and systems. It's a very costly treatment. It requires a lot of, material, human resource, all of that. And therefore, it's not at all. Yeah, yeah. And the technology is good, and therefore we can actually save a lot of, but there's no investment, there's no allocation of resources. Yeah, but that needs to come from the public system, which is not coming because they don't even see this as important. Imagine if it were men dying in the kitchen, whole thing would have changed probably. I don't know. It just makes you feel, it just makes you question, like, who is it? It's women, and it's okay for them to die because nobody's questioning it, right? There's an attitude of health professionals, which is also a problem. Yeah, go ahead. Now coming to medical legal care, and those are some of those issues that you were raising about does she file a case, not file a case, whatever. Now, let's look at what the medical legal system is supposed to do, okay? Now, there are clear laws, and this is a historic thing with dowry deaths. So when dowry deaths were occurring, that's the women's movement, raised it as an issue of violence, brought the whole dying declaration bit, the criminalization bit, all of that came into criminal law. So as per law, within 8 years of marriage, all of it, you have to look at every burn injury reported by women as, you'll agree, sir, as a case of violence unless proven otherwise. Okay? That's not what is happening. So as per that, the health system is supposed to assess the percentage of burns and degrees. This is done by the treating doctor. If you look at the medical trail, you'll find that the percentage differs. So the casualty medical officer will put it as whatever, what I described, 50 or what, they have their own way of deciding where she goes, which ward and what treatment. Postmortems will have a different percentage, so that there's a differing there. So I mean, if we are talking about science, where's your science here? Okay, if it should be the same everywhere. uh, they are supposed to say what caused it. Mostly this is based on as reported by the survivor. So there is no the protocol, even the specialized centers that have protocol, there is no clear mention of how to ascertain that. Like, if she's saying it was oil, is that being put, is there some kind of a investigation or a note to the investigation officer to look for oil, whatever. So whatever the victim says is recorded. If she says it is accident, they just write it without much details. Next, coming to this whole thing about whether assessing whether the person sustaining these injuries was fit enough to give a declaration. This is another role of the doctors. They're supposed to do that, whether dying declaration. What's happening is doctors know this, but there are no dying declarations being taken because there are no FIRs. So a medical legal case gets done, but the police don't come because even if they, there's just nobody saying that go and take a dying declaration. And doctors actually said that even when in cases where they've seen dying declarations being taken, nobody informs the woman that she's going to die, that this is a dying declaration. And this is the biggest contradiction, or, most painful reality, that when the feminist movement asked for a dying declaration in all these cases, the expectation was that when a person dies, the person speaks the truth. But women in our patriarchal society lie even when they are dying. Go ahead. And when I say lie, I'm not blaming them. I'm saying that the patriarchal nature and the family structure prevents them from telling the truth. Assess the cause of death. Now, this cause of death is ascertained by the, forensic expert. When does the forensic expert come into picture? Not when she is brought to the hospital, after her death, which means her body has had a lot of fluid, whatever, all treatment, and then that person is assessing cause of death. So often it's left to as reported by the thing, or not, cannot be ascertained. Those are the kinds of medical records that you will see. Uh, Inquest and all has to be made, but if there is a complaint, I'm saying routinely what is happening. Yeah, that's, but it's not happening. Not happening. Assess the time since injury and manner of injury. Again, all that you find in the medical record is as given, as reported by the patient. Okay, no mention of fuel or vehicle for burning, position when she fell. All these are very clear medical indicators which they are supposed to, but they are not recording it. To assess whether the injuries were ante-mortem or post-mortem, that also becomes important. Even that is done only at the time of post-mortem, which again is a problem because there's a huge gap, because the forensic expert hasn't met her, seen her, examined her when she was brought in. Go ahead. Providers, it's not as if they have no knowledge. They spoke about different indicators of saying how they can make a distinction between suicidal, homicidal, and accident. But obviously, they are not doing it as part of their practice. There was a reluctance to go beyond what was reported. In fact, some of them said that, how can I say that this is not true? I have to just record what the woman said. Because if I put in my observation and say it doesn't match, then am I not saying that she's lying? Okay, this is the doctor's response to me. And I, having worked on sexual violence, for me the question was, when a rape victim comes to you, she is telling you, giving you a history of sexual violence. As doctors, you're questioning her all the time. You're conducting two-finger test, all of it, and questioning it. But when a burns victim, her body, and see, in a rape case, her body cannot tell you whether it was rape or consensual, really, because most rape cases will not have any injury on her body. But we all believe that a medical medical test will tell us whether rape occurred or not. And doctors also believe that. Burns victim's body is speaking, but they don't want to listen. Go ahead. So these are the inadequacies and inconsistencies in recording of burns. A woman may have suffered burns, she may die at home, a postmortem may be done, or nothing may be done. Her body will just be disposed of. She may reach a hospital. At the hospital, she may report a kitchen accident. No intervention, it just gets recorded as accidental burns. Or if she gives a history of suicidal burns, no further investigation. So domestic violence is not going to be recorded. It may at the most get recorded as a suicide. If she gives, there's an allegation of harassment, only then there might be some, and which has to be supported by her parental family. Only then there would be or an organization like Aveksha. Only then this further things will happen. So it really, my study really busted this whole kitchen accident myth. There are no kitchen accidents. And I think we really need to question what is happening in the public and private. And there's a conspiracy of silence by all institutions. So in my head, and I give this example, Donna and Satya, every time I speak, that the time I spent at Victoria Hospital in your burns ward, all women were in one line, and it's visually captured in my, I just want to describe it. And Satya did allude to it, every woman will have mostly her husband standing next to her, waiting for her to die. Waiting for her to die. He's not there because he cares. He's there so that she does not tell the truth, because Satya is hovering around in the burns ward. So it's painful, and that visual has stayed in my mind, and that is the reality of most burns wards. And in many other places, you won't even have the husband there. Why is the husband there in Victoria Hospital? Because there is a Satya there who's talking to survivors. I visited the general hospitals, nobody is there. The relatives they're all standing outside. You go and talk to them, they just start crying as if they really care. But they actually just, waiting when this is going to end, the ordeal, so that they can all go home. Yeah. There's huge shortcomings in the hospital response. Who should treat? Whether should it be a plastic surgeon or general surgeon? And Dr. Madhuri Gore, who's set up the entire burns protocol in Sion Hospital, and she's a general surgeon. And she says that our plastic, do we even have adequate plastic surgeons in this country? We don't. And are we going to go towards a specialized centers which are highly resourced and will only serve few people, versus you go to general surgeons, get them to follow a standard protocol, we may be able to save more women. And we may be able to treat burn injuries with much more scientific and sensitive response. Yeah, go ahead. I've already mentioned that. So, and there is a overall poor public health response, where if we take a public health perspective, shouldn't we be worried about this? And why are we not investigating? Why are we not, questioning what is happening and looking at prevention? Because next is prevention. Yeah. Now, coming to the lack of gender sensitivity in education, and these are examples from medical textbooks. They are largely, focusing on biomedical, no attitudinal content there. There's no mention of epidemiology of burns in medical textbooks. Signs of homicide are mentioned as those of suicide. And this is from Modi's textbook, which is, considered as a Bible. And, what Satya described about what is put in is an example in the textbook, Satya, where the author has said that if you find that her hands, legs and mouth were gagged or whatever, they were tied, that means that she did not want to scream. So she did all this to herself and then burnt herself. It's there. So there's no exaggeration. There's I can circulate the excerpt from the textbook. There's another content in the textbooks which says no one can be burnt against their will. No one can be raped against her will, so no one can be burnt against their will. Yeah? Modi's medical jurisprudence. Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing. That's the yeah, I looked for it. I said, where is there an example that the person is quoted that if there's it's almost like saying, because I know that if I burn myself it will be so painful, so I put cloth in my mouth. That is how it is described. Of course, we should challenge it. So, yeah. So, I won't repeat some things which have already been said, but there is a whole lack of understanding or even mention of domestic violence. And there is a whole acceptance of what happens within families. And in fact, it's normalization, to say ki haan, jhagda hai, or there are quarrels. It's not domestic violence. So, there's a need for injury documentation and a national registry. There is that effort being taken by the Ministry of Health through its national burns program. But if you look at that form, it does not capture anything of what I had mentioned as far as the medical legal role is concerned, or the kind of burns, the content of the burns policy does not figure in that format that the Ministry of Health has issued. And I think, yeah, there is a need to have clear protocols so that primary secondary level also are able to treat burns care. And not so, remember that when a burns case comes to a secondary hospital, they don't even give her the first aid which she should get. They are just waiting to transfer her to a higher facility. So by the time she reaches a higher facility, within 3 days, see, burns care, you need, with first 3 days are most crucial. So if you give her the standard protocol, which is not very expensive, survival can be higher. And I'm saying this with confidence because this is what surgeons have actually clearly said when they were spoken to. Yeah.
Really a wonderful synthesis, and we don't have much research in this area actually. So her PhD thesis focusing on this topic, I think, is one of the first that's really looking at this issue from this angle, and so a very important contribution. Any questions or comments?
The section where the doctors, they don't really ask, as opposed to the entire process of rape. So during your PhD and your research, did you actually manage to talk to doctors and pose the same question to them? And what was their response on it? And what do you figure can be approached to make it better?
Yeah. So, like I said, this is based on their responses. So, there was observation. I saw, read the records. I knew they are not recording, and most of them justified what they are doing. So they said that, we do what we have to write what the patient says. So I said that when the patient is saying, and you can smell kerosene, that's not my job. That is the forensic expert's job. So I said, forensic expert is going to meet her. Then I met a forensic expert. They said, yeah, all this should be done at the time the patient is received. So it's always batting. Yeah. But see, that's the thing about domestic violence and sexual violence. Yeah, their sexuality, all of that, there's a whole different thing. I mean, really, it is ridiculous to have a protocol of those so many pages for a rape examination, when actually her body, you only need to write what she has said, give her treatment, and let her go. Because let the courts decide. There's nothing you can do as a doctor. Only if she has injuries, anyway, it's going to get recorded as part of care. You're collecting evidence from her body when she's already taken a bath. She's coming after 3 days. I mean, it's a total ridiculous exercise. Here, there is. It's there. But it's domestic violence. It's happening within homes. Nobody wants to get into it. We don't know what is happening. They keep changing statements. Today she'll say this, tomorrow she'll say that. Let's not get into it. So it's a whole attitudinal thing. And there's no accountability. When feminist movement was ensuring that, they were going to every hospital, ensuring that a dying declaration was done, it was being done. They also gave up at some point, because the women's, you read through the dying declarations, women are saying, no, it was an accident. You create that's what happened with 498A. Why do we have the domestic violence law? Because women don't want they want a home without violence. They don't want the husband arrested. So women, even if they are facing severe domestic violence, will not file a police complaint. And therefore the need for the civil law. And in this case, anything you say is criminalized, right? Because it's so many, whether it's the dowry, 490, everything and it's a severe offense. So zipping is the only. It's okay for them to tell a stranger like me when I'm promising confidentiality. I mean, the dilemmas, but it's a promise. Like you forget about doctors. I thought you'll ask me what did I do when they said it was suicide. Huh? Yeah, yeah. What do you do? Because you say that she refuses, and she says don't tell anybody, but this is what has happened. That's the crux of, if I say that this has happened, what are you going to do? If it's the police case, then I'm not saying anything. But is it possible for us to do something beyond that without having to register a police complaint? Can she be provided support? Can she be promised that support? Can that be facilitated so that at least she's, yeah.
What the one point, I mean, among the points I had in mind, I would like to mention only one, and that is that in our studies and in our responses, proposed responses, we must realistically take into account the legal position, existing legal position and legal procedures. I find that many times we lose sight of it. For example, you see, one example was given that one statement she gives, and then after some time she's giving the real statement. She has given that, oh, I did myself. Then after a few days, she wants to really, and police say that court nulli nillalla. It will not stand the court. Actually, he is not explaining, but this is the position. Actually, this is the position. So you must understand this. Instead of blaming somebody that second statement is not being recorded, you must know that that's the legal position. When you change, and I'll give another. You asked her that, were you prepared to say this when you came to know? If she gives such a statement to the police, she will have to come to the court. Is she prepared to come? How many times you don't know? So you must program your responses, take into account ours is a accusatorial legal system where the proof, the standard of proof is very high, much higher than Europe and America. You have to prove the guilt to the hilt. That is the sentence here. So then, what is to be done by the defense counsel is to create a doubt. Oh, first she said like this, now she is like this. So what do we can't believe. So we must take into account. And our responses should be nuanced responses. I'll just one example and I'll stop. See, many years back, some people took it upon themselves that eve teasing is too much in Bangalore and Karnataka and you must tackle it very effectively. Eve teasing normally is tackled by some provisions of Karnataka Police Act. So I was not aware, but some people took up and government planned a whole sort of changes in Karnataka Police Act. And one of the changes was that every case of eve teasing should be registered by an ASP and investigated by an ASP. Somehow it so happened that when the final discussion was taking place with the government, from police department side I was sent, though I was not directly involved. Somehow they wanted somebody to go, so they asked me to go and attend the meeting. When I heard this, I was aghast, because in the whole of the state of Karnataka, there are never more than 3 to 4 ASPs. Sometimes there are 2. Sometimes there is nobody, no ASP is there. If there is, so then who will record and who will register? So unless we know the legal positions, I thought we can take, then our effectiveness will be more. That's why, from that point of view, I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
There was no time, but there's also been a study which many of you may know or not in Hyderabad. They looked at all cases of dowry deaths and dying declarations, all of it. So on one hand, I may say that dying declarations were not being taken, but there they studied up to the acquittal and court outcomes, and they found that dying declarations where they were done, most of them did not stand the scrutiny of the criminal justice system. So it's not just about recording it, it's also about ensuring that it stands to that scrutiny. So those are, the criminal justice system is really made in such a way that it's very difficult to prove, especially domestic violence. So that's thank you for bringing that in. I just want to say that it's not about whether criminalized, not criminalized, whatever it is. I think the focus, and I don't know, I'm assuming that all of us will agree that we need to look at it from the perspective of treatment and care. So whether they do an FIR, don't want to do, even they want to maintain it, they have a right to the standard quality of care that must be provided. And if so many women are dying, we have to ensure public funds. We understand that the health system is what it is, overburdened, but we have to make. And if the one that I gave an example of, this 25 bed, if they can do it, why can't others? And the budget for that center was 2.45 crores for medical supplies, meaning the wound care. And the national program has 2.5 crores for the entire center. How is it going to work? It's not going to work. So we are setting up something which is not going to really do anything. And you have these specialized centers with 5 or 10 beds in a district hospital. It's not going to serve that purpose. So I think if we can all agree that irrespective of whether she is saying it's DV, not, she has a right to live, she has a right. And I think that's what the campaign that Donna and team led was, that they have a right to dignity, right to life. Right to life.